Welcome. This is an intro to episode 6 of my Graham's journey, and this particular episode is going to be discussing solely about gout, although I do digress a couple of times. I already have prepared the video for about gout. I did that yesterday, but as I said in previous episodes, now that I'm on the carnivore diet, I seem to wake up about 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's no exaggeration. I actually woke up at 3 o'clock today, and about 4 o'clock my cat came in and tried to get me up to feed her. But of course I'm the boss, so I didn't get up until 4 o'clock, which is now. So she's had something to eat, and she's very unsociable because as soon as she has something to eat, she jumps out the cat flap and leaves me alone. So here we are. This is going to be all about gout, and I hope you benefit from it and learn something. So on with the show. Gout. What is it? Well, there are actually two types of gout. Excuse me for looking at my notes, but this is quite technical what I'm going to discuss. There's two types. The main type is what I'll call normal gout, and the second type is called pseudo gout, which my doctor told me it was called pseudo gout, which I don't think is a very good name because pseudo means false or fake, and tell you what, there's nothing false or fake about the pain that pseudo gout can cause. Unbearable pain. So let's talk about first of all what we'll call normal gout. And normal gout is caused by uric acid crystals getting into your joints, and those joints can be anywhere. They can be, most people get uric acid crystals or gout in their big toe, but you can also get it in your ankle like I do. Some even get it in the knee, and it's possible also to get it in your elbow joints. The important thing is it's in a joint, and very sharp crystals get into your joints and cause excruciating pain. So where do these crystals come from? Well, most people associate gout with eating a lot of meat and seafood, which is almost correct. But the main thing is that you get uric acid from is high purine foods, and the high purine foods gets somehow or other converted into uric acid, and that uric acid gets then converted into crystals, and thanks to the effect of gravity, it tends to end up going to the lowest point in your body through your bloodstream. So what are high purine foods? Well, the highest purine foods are seafood, and especially the health food like salmon. That's where I got most of my gout from, is eating salmon. But also organ meats like liver, in my case lamb's fry, which is lamb's liver. I don't ever eat bull's liver, but I do like lamb's fry, and I've tried kidney as well. So if you're having steak and kidney casserole, you'll have kidneys in it. So those organ meats are high in purine and will convert to uric acid in your system. But that process of converting purines into uric acid is actually a normal metabolic process of digesting flesh. And so here I am, I'm an advocate of carnivore diets, which is eating flesh, which can cause gout. But we'll get into that, more of that later. But the fact that it's actually the process of digesting flesh, for example, if you decide to go on a fast, your body actually self-metabolizes, which they call autophagy, I think that's the right word, where your body is actually eating itself. And when you're fasting, your body is making use of parts of your body to keep itself going, keep you alive. Well, that will also cause uric acid to be formed and crystals to be formed. And fasting can also cause gout. So when you're fasting, you're not eating anything and you can get gout. But some other major culprits, as most people know, beer is also a serious candidate for causing gout. Now, I'm not sure what it is in beer that is so bad, but also alcohol any type of alcohol can contribute to gout. But one of the main culprits that will cause gout that most people have no idea about is fructose. If you have a high fructose diet, as in eating a lot of fruit, that can be a contributing factor towards gout. Now, I was a very keen fruit eater. If I felt like having a cleansing period, I'd just eat fruit for 2 or 3 days. Well, that's probably the worst thing you can possibly do. In fact, I read a comment on somebody else's YouTube video of a guy that tried to eat nothing but fruit, and his gout just got considerably worse through eating fruit. But the other thing to watch, even more serious than fruit, is one of the highest concentrations of fructose is any drinks that have high fructose corn syrup, such as Coca-Cola, Fanta, lemonade, Mountain Dew is particularly bad. Any of those soda drinks that have got high fructose corn syrup, Ep6, I think I got that right, that has, in the latest studies, has been found to be a very strong contributor to the causing of gout. Another very high fructose drink that a lot of people don't even suspect might cause gout is orange drinks, or any fruit drinks for that matter. Even the pure, freshly squeezed orange juice or fruit juice of any type is very high in fructose and will make your gout worse. Okay, let's move on to the second type of gout, which my doctor called pseudo gout, which is another way of saying false or fake gout. But as I said earlier, there's nothing false or fake about the pain that it causes. So what is pseudo gout? Well, pseudo gout is very similar but has a different cause. Pseudo gout is caused by oxalates in your bloodstream, and oxalates combine with calcium, and as I mentioned in my last video episode, your teeth are made of calcium, and oxalates will combine with the calcium in your teeth, and that's what causes the plaque. And the plaque is extremely hard and you need a high-speed drill from a dental hygienist to get it off. But I mentioned in my last video, episode 5, that I found a way to get oxalates to come off quite easily. So what are oxalates? Well, oxalates are in most vegetables, and I've got a list here that I've written down of the most common foods that have oxalates in them. So the most common is green leafy vegetables. What is supposed to be good for you is especially spinach has one of the highest oxalate levels you can get. And also silver beet. Here in New Zealand we call it silver beet. In other countries they call it Swiss chard. So silver beet or Swiss chard, they're both very high in oxalates. And things like kale. The vegetables that have the least amount of oxalates are your cruciferous vegetables like cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. They have less oxalates, but they all have some oxalates. Another high oxalate food is soy. So avoid all those soy drinks that you might be tempted to have, like soy coffee. Avoid soy like the plague. And also almonds are extremely high in oxalates. So all those almond drinks, milk almonds, stay away from them like the plague. Another surprising vegetable that is quite high in oxalates is potatoes. Now, potatoes are high in oxalate, but guess what's got more oxalates than potatoes? Kumara, or other countries they call sweet potato. So potatoes, and especially kumara, are very high in oxalates. Another common drink that many people drink is tea, your ordinary black tea that most people drink. Fortunately, coffee has no oxalates in it, so you're safe to drink coffee. Another problem vegetable is, is it called a vegetable? Well, it's a plant anyway. Rhubarb. Rhubarb is also extremely high in oxalates and will cause you a lot of problems. There are also oxalates in cereal grains, beets, and one fruit that is particularly high in oxalates. Not only does it have fructose, but it also is very high in oxalates, is kiwi fruit. Who would have thought? I used to love eating my kiwi fruit. And of course, peanut butter is also, or peanuts and peanut butter are also very high in oxalates. And a Maori food here in New Zealand that the Maoris like to eat is puha. That is also high in oxalates. And one other thing that I haven't got on my list, but I've just remembered, is dark chocolate. So if you want to avoid oxalates, eat the white milk chocolate rather than the dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is very high in oxalates, which I think I've mentioned in one of my earlier episodes. Oxalates have a tendency to combine with the minerals in your body. Oxalate's favourite mineral is calcium. So what tends to happen is these oxalates combine with the calcium in your body, as I mentioned before, like with your teeth, and also when they get down near your bones, they can steal the calcium out of your bones, and a lot of women suffer from osteoporosis. I think I've got the right name. And possibly because women tend to eat more salads and vegetables than the men folk. But I could be completely wrong about that. But not only do oxalates combine with calcium, but they also combine with the iron in your blood. So the oxalates are stealing your iron. So if you're having a trouble with low iron levels or anemia, that could be the reason why. Oh, hi. I accidentally turned on my recorder. But seeing as I'm here now, I just wanted to mention that regarding having a lack of iron, which many ladies complain about perhaps because of their menstruation issues with the loss of blood, they feel that they need to increase the amount of iron that they have to stop them from suffering anemia. And many people, especially women, try to eat a lot of spinach and silver beet because they've been told that those vegetables are very high, keep my camera right, are very high in iron, which is true. But, and there's a big but, spinach and silver beet are also very high in oxalates. And guess what? They have so much oxalate, and oxalate combines with iron. So if you eat spinach, you're not really going to get any iron because the oxalates have combined with the iron, and there's so much oxalate in spinach that it will probably combine with the iron that you've already got and make you deficient in iron. So spinach is not the way to increase your iron. The best way to increase your iron is to eat red meat, and you'll get plenty of iron. Another thing that people don't realise is that although eggs are very good for you and good on the carnivore diet, eggs also stop you from absorbing iron, even if you eat red meat. So people who are suffering from excess iron, like me, because I suffer from hemochromatosis, which is too much iron in the blood, because although iron is absolutely essential for life, that's how you make red blood cells, is with iron, but too much iron is deadly. It will kill you. So you need to get just the right balance of iron. And the worst thing you can do is to take iron tablets, which is what doctors often prescribe if you have anemia. But they never suggest that you stop eating spinach or eggs or silver beet or Swiss chard and many other vegetables that are high in oxalate. They won't tell you to stop eating dark chocolate or to stop eating peanut butter on toast, because toast has also got, especially wholemeal toast, is high in oxalates. Funny, I've always eaten wholemeal bread, like my Vogel's bread, but apparently the wholemeal bread's got more oxalates in it than white bread. It's healthier to eat white bread. Who would have thought? These are all the new discoveries that are being made, but most people don't know the new discoveries. It'll probably be 50 years before people realise how wrong we've all been for so long. But I digress. We're supposed to be talking about gout. But I would like to talk about one other thing about oxalates, and that's oxalates also combine with potassium and steal your potassium. Now, if you're low in potassium, it's something that when you're in hospital with cardiovascular problems like me, they're always checking your potassium, because if you're low in potassium, you're going to have heart problems. What do they call it? I might have to pause here because I can't remember the word. Okay, I just had to Google it because I couldn't remember the proper word for it. It's called atrial fibrillation, which is an irregular heartbeat. If you're suffering from atrial fibrillation, it's possible that you're deficient in potassium. And of course, if you've got a high oxalate diet, then you're going to be low in potassium and magnesium, which I mentioned next. So you might think, oh, I should eat lots more potatoes because potatoes are high in potassium. But guess what? They are also high in oxalates. So the oxalates are going to steal your potassium and make you deficient in potassium. So really the best way to get your minerals is to eat meat. Okay. Okay, on to the next thing. What else do oxalates combine with? They combine with potassium and magnesium. So if you're suffering from lots of cramps, or even what do they call it, restless legs syndrome, that could be because the oxalates are stealing your magnesium, and so if you're lacking in magnesium, you get leg cramps and all sorts of similar things. Oxalates can also get into your brain and are a cause of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So oxalates are pretty all-round bad, but we're just talking about gout at the moment, the pseudo gout. And for false gout, it's extremely painful. I can assure you of that. Now, if your kidneys are meant to filter out both the uric acid and the oxalates in your system. So if your kidneys are working top notch, then you won't get gout or all these other problems, because your kidneys will filter them out. So, a lot of people don't ever get gout or arthritis. That's possibly because their kidneys are working really, really well. So, but if you're unlucky and your kidneys aren't working top notch, then one of the first problems you might get is kidney stones. Now, for some reason, some people get kidney stones, which is actually calcium oxalates. It's not uric acid, it's calcium oxalates. You'll get kidney stones, which I believe is extremely painful. But if you manage to avoid kidney stones, your kidneys might say, oh, we can't handle all these oxalates at the moment, send them somewhere else. And so it goes back into your bloodstream, and gravity takes those crystals all the way down to the lowest part of your body, being thanks to gravity. Simple as that. Just goes to the lowest point in your body. But oxalates are also very attracted to any previous injuries where there's some sort of inflammation. I don't understand why, but if you've had a broken foot or damaged knee, that's where the gout will, the oxalate gout, that would be a better name for it rather than pseudo gout. The oxalate gout will give you pain there, or in your elbow, or in your fingers. So oxalate crystals are very hard and very sharp. That's why they're so painful. So I'll just pause there while I think about my next comment. Okay? I'm not scientifically minded enough. So pause. Okay, well, gout can be caused by the foods you eat, both oxalates and high purine foods, or vegetables and fruit and beer. All these things can cause gout. But what happens to people who get gout is they call it, oh, I've just had a gout attack. So they might get gout, they might have it for a few days or a week, and then it clears up, and then 3 months later they get another gout attack, and they say, oh, I drank too much beer, or I had some Coke, or I ate some salmon. Whatever they think might be the trigger, they call it a trigger for gout. Well, the reason for that is a little more complicated, because when you eat something that causes you to have high uric acid, or for some reason you have oxalates floating around in your bloodstream for very different reasons, then those crystals are very sharp and very damaging. And the first thing that happens is your immune system will try and come to the rescue. And because those sharp crystals are very damaging to your joints, incidentally, particularly the oxalate crystals not only damage your joints, but those oxalates are travelling through your whole bloodstream and damaging the inside of your arteries and causing inflammation on the inside of your arteries. And of course, then when your arteries are damaged, this is a bit of a side stream, your arteries are damaged, then your liver will produce more cholesterol to send down to repair the damage in your arteries. That's a whole nother story. So we've got to stick to gout, okay? But if anybody wants to know more about oxalates, put it in the comments. That's what you'd like to hear more about. Anyway, your immune system thinks, right, there's these sharp crystals that we have to deal with to protect your body, in particular your joints. So your immune system will go down and encase those sharp crystals with, I'm not sure what it is, but it encases those crystals with, it puts it into a, what would you call it, into a ball of something which protects your bones and joints from the sharp crystals. So it's like putting a little balloon around the crystals to protect you, all right? And so it doesn't get rid of the crystals, they stay there, but that balloon effect stops the crystals from giving you excruciating pain. And so, but the crystals are still there, right? So when that happens, you think everything's okay because you have no pain and you think that the gout has gone away, so all your problems are solved. But the crystals are still there. Now, when you decide to eat a more healthy diet and or the kidneys recover from whatever stressful situation you've put them through, like drinking alcohol, fructose, or high fructose drinks, alcohol, beer in particular, or maybe a high oxalate diet like having green smoothies made out of spinach and silver beet, or some other high oxalate food that has caused your kidneys to be overburdened with trying to deal with the excess overload of oxalate. Whatever it is that you've been doing to cause your kidneys extra stress, when your kidneys get to the stage where, oh, we can cope now, somehow or other a signal gets sent down to your, wherever your gout crystals, whether it's uric acid or oxalates, doesn't matter, those protective balloons that are around the crystals get dissolved so that the crystals can go back into your bloodstream. And so when those crystals are released from their little protective sacs that are stopping you from feeling the pain of those sharp crystals, then when those crystals are released again, you will experience excruciating pain, and you will think that you've had another gout attack, and you'll try and think back, well, what have I just eaten that's caused this? And sometimes people will say, oh, I just had some asparagus and that's triggered off my gout. But it may not be that at all. It may be just, as naturopaths call it, a healing crisis. So your body is actually trying to get rid of those very sharp, nasty crystals, whether they're uric acid crystals or oxalate crystals. And so at a time when your kidneys think, oh, we can handle that now, those crystals are released and you will experience excruciating pain until you get those crystals back up to your kidneys and hopefully don't cause kidney stones. And if you're drinking enough water, your kidneys will be able to flush those crystals away. That's why it's recommended that if you have got gout, keep your legs elevated, because then the crystals that are down there, because of gravity will help those crystals come back up to your kidneys, and your kidneys, if they're working properly, will get rid of the crystals. If your kidneys aren't working properly, you'll get kidney stones. So an important tip is, when you have gout, drink plenty of water. Also, apple cider is touted as being very good for gout as well, which I've used apple cider, but I didn't find it. Oh, I meant to say apple cider vinegar, which is very good for gout. Of course, apple cider is an alcoholic drink, which I quite like. It'll probably make your gout worse. Okay? And also cherry juice. They say cherry juice is very good for you, good for gout. Well, I've paid a lot of money out for cherry juice and it didn't really make any difference. But you need to drink a lot of water, keep your legs elevated, and that all those things will help. So what I'm trying to say is, gout has got an in period and an out period. So when you first eat something that's likely to cause you gout, the crystals get formed and go down to your joints and cause you excruciating pain. Your body comes along and somehow deals with it, puts those balloons around the crystals. But then when, later on, a few weeks later, your body decides, oh, we can deal with those crystals now, and they get released back into your bloodstream and cause excruciating pain again, and then your kidneys will try and get rid of those crystals. That's why the doctor says that when he gives you allopurinol, that's because that allopurinol will help your body to release those crystals. So those crystals that are in your joints are going to get released and cause you gout again, thanks to the drug. And you need extremely good painkillers to stop the pain, so you can survive that. And then the allopurinol is supposed to stop you from getting gout again, which is a whole nother subject, because it doesn't always work. A lot of people are taking allopurinol for the rest of their lives, but they still get gout. Doctors cannot detect oxalates in your blood. There's no blood test that can detect what oxalates you've got. So a doctor may give you a blood test and say to you that you've got no urate in your blood, which is uric acid. So they'll think that you have just got pseudo gout. That's because you've got all the pain of gout, but the doctors cannot find any evidence to show that you've got uric acid, so they don't think you've got gout. So they simply call it pseudo gout. So possibly what they will do is they won't give you allopurinol, because that wouldn't have any effect on oxalate gout or pseudo gout. So what they do instead is they'll give you painkillers like ibuprofen or diclofenac, which they can only give you if you don't have any cardiovascular problems. So if you do have cardiovascular problems, or in other words, heart problems, they will most likely prescribe you colchicine, because that doesn't have any ill effects on your heart. Whereas they won't give you ibuprofen, diclofenac, and in New Zealand the brand name is Voltaren. They don't like to give people with heart problems those anti-inflammatory drugs, because they can be fatal, which is quite a serious side effect. But colchicine is just a painkiller. It won't cure you of gout. In fact, it may be the doctor will just tell you, or you just need to take colchicine every day for the rest of your life to stop you from getting gout. It doesn't actually stop you from getting gout, it just stops the pain. So that's what will happen. But if they're a smart doctor, or they're all smart, but they may not have the knowledge that calcium deposits from oxalates can be seen in an x-ray. So if they give you an x-ray of the spot that is causing all the problems, the calcium deposits can be seen in an x-ray, and then that will confirm that your gout is being caused by oxalates. Okay? But I've found the best way to avoid gout is to go on the carnivore diet, which is eating flesh, which you would think would cause more uric acid and give you more gout. But because I have a tendency to get gout, although I'm eating meat most of the time, I've now decided to avoid lamb's fry, except for the odd occasion when I think my kidneys will be able to handle it. And I avoid seafoods, especially salmon. It seems to be that every time I've eaten salmon, I've gotten gout. So, not always, but that seems to have been a common feature. When I get gout, I think, oh, I've just eaten salmon. But the trouble is, you've got the in and the out problem. So, if you go on a fast, that's when your body decides to clean up all the toxic stuff in your body, both uric acid and oxalates, and all of a sudden all those crystals are released again, and you'll get excruciating pain when you haven't been eating anything. You're on a fast. So you can't blame meat for that particular bout of gout. Does that all make sense? I hope it does. So it's quite a difficult thing to overcome, but it can be done. Now, one other point I want to mention is your kidneys have the job of removing both uric acid and oxalates. But just a side point, uric acid is not actually something that's bad for you. Uric acid is an antioxidant. You know, lots of people eat blueberries because they're high in oxidants. What are they called? Yeah, oxidants? Is that what you say? Anyway, I might have to block this. I might have to redo this bit. Yeah, so antioxidants. That's right. Blueberries are high in antioxidants, but they're also high in fructose. So they kind of negate each other. So the high oxalates can cause you gout. Oh, I'm getting sidetracked here. I'm really definitely going to have to redo this. The uric acid is an antioxidant, so it's actually good for you. But too much uric acid, in fact, too much of any antioxidants, are very bad for you. So the high level of uric acid ends up turning into those very sharp crystals, which gives you gout. Okay? Now, I mentioned the kidneys for a very important reason. If your kidneys aren't working properly, you're more likely to get gout or kidney stones or lots of other problems. Now, the trouble is, most of the medications that you're given by doctors for diabetes, for example, metformin, is very bad for your kidneys. Aspirin, and the doctors are always prescribing low-dose aspirins, especially for heart, cardiovascular problems. Low-dose aspirins cause problems for your kidneys. In fact, nearly all drugs that you take are going to cause your kidneys to have trouble operating properly. So you need to be aware of that also. So you might never have had gout in your life, and then you get given medications by the doctor, and all of a sudden you'll get gout for one reason or the other, either uric acid gout or oxalate gout. So I hope that has cleared up a lot of questions you might have about gout. That has all taken me a long time to learn and lots of study and research. So I hope that that all helps someone out there that looks at my boring videos. And please comment, let me know if it's helped you or not. After reviewing my video so far a few times, I've realised that some of my viewers may want to know how I resolved my gout issues. I don't want to use the C word, no, not that word, the C word that ends in E, because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. How I resolved my gout issues was recently, about a month ago, I did get another gout attack, and I was surprised because Dr. Ken Berry had assured me that on the carnivore diet you will not get gout, but I did. But then the reason for that was because I had been eating lamb's fry, and it just so happened that my local supermarket had oysters on special for half price, which is still horrendously expensive, but they were fresh oysters in a shell. So I bought a dozen of them, and I ate 4 a day. So for the next 3 days I had oysters, plus they had salmon on special, so I bought salmon as well. So for the next 3 or 4 days I was eating oysters, lamb's fry and salmon, and I got an attack of gout. Not a really bad one, but one that I could cope with just by taking paracetamol. And incidentally, you have to be very careful with paracetamol. Don't take more than 8 paracetamols a day. That's 8 500 milligram paracetamols. So that's only 2 every 6 hours. So by the time 6 hours are up, the pain can get quite intense. But I managed to get through that without going to the doctor and getting colchicine, and without the doctor trying to put me on allopurinol. But the pain got better after a few days, but even a week later I still had an ache in my ankle. I could walk on it, I could get around, but there was still a constant ache that I had to take paracetamol for at night time anyway. So I thought, well, why isn't my system clearing that up? So I thought maybe my kidneys are under a bit of extra stress at the moment. And I realised that I was still taking some diabetic medicine. This one here, Galvus, which can cause some stress on your kidneys. So because I was on the carnivore diet, I have virtually no sugar or carbs, so my blood sugar is very much under control. So I figured I don't really need to take the diabetic pills, so I decided to stop taking them so that my kidneys could have a chance to recover. And the very day that I stopped taking the diabetic pills, the Galvus tablets, that very same day my achy foot stopped hurting, and it's been good ever since. But I'm still very wary of eating lamb's fry, salmon and oysters, so I'm still doing the carnivore diet because that helps eliminate the oxalates. So without going into more detail about that, I'm now just going to do a summary and conclusion to end this long as video about gout. So I'll pause now and then we'll go on to my summary and conclusion. I just wanted to add one thing before I do my final conclusion, and that is that some people never get gout at all, so probably won't even watch this video because it won't interest them. But the thing is, those oxalates that I have talked about that can cause gout because your kidneys may not be able to deal with them, if your kidneys can't deal with them, the oxalates don't necessarily cause gout. They can cause all sorts of problems. Like I also mentioned, they can damage the insides of your arteries, they can damage the insides of your digestive system, they can also be the cause of your arthritis. I asked my good friend if he'd ever had gout, and he said no, he's never had gout, and yet he's had total kidney failure. In fact, he's had a kidney transplant and he's never had gout, but he does have serious arthritis. In fact, he's had to have a hip replacement, and I think he's had 2 hip replacements. I can't remember if he's had a knee replacement or not, but that's what oxalates can do. They can cause serious arthritis. Oxalates can also, as I mentioned before, get into your brain. They can cause things like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, some of those other problems that are related to your brain not working properly, multiple sclerosis. So oxalates can cause lots of problems, not just gout. So you're probably starting to understand why I want to avoid vegetables. They are deadly. Vegetables, all plant food is trying to kill you. So one other thing I was just going to say. Oh yes, gout is actually a subform of arthritis. So if you've got arthritis, it could be your oxalate overload. So have a look at your diet and see if your diet has got too many oxalates. So now we'll do the conclusion. Okay, bye. So we'll move on now to hopefully a quick summary and conclusion. So what you have to remember is there's 2 types of gout. One the doctors call gout and the other one they call pseudo gout. The normal gout is where you get uric acid crystals. The pseudo gout is really oxalate overload gout. And there's also the in period and the out period. So when you eat something that's going to cause you gout, that's when the crystals are formed and go into your joints, and then your body tries to protect you by coating those crystals in some sort of gel or sac that protects your joints. You think the gout's gone away, but then later on when your body decides to clean up your gout problems, and that can happen if you suddenly go on a carnivore diet or go on a fast or some other diet that gives your body a chance to try and clean up. So that's when you'll get gout again, when the gout is coming, when the crystals are coming back out. So I hope that clears everything up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, and also just remember that lots of medicines can also make it difficult for your kidneys to clear up those crystals, which can also contribute to you having gout. So that's all. That's the conclusion. No more boring video from me. And please comment on what you'd like to hear. again or more details. I'll try and answer any questions that come up, and look forward to my next video. Okay, bye for now. Oh, and just to prove that I haven't got a stroke, I say live long and prosper without painful gout. Thank you. Bye.